Greetings and salutations, fellow book readers. This is Mark, and the book I will review today is Factotum. Before we continue, this is personalized limited edition of the Factotum with leather cover designed and made by me. At the end of the video, I will tell you a couple of ways of how you can get one for yourself, if you are interested. Now, let's get back to the review. Factotum is a second novel written by American writer Charles Bukowski and published in 1975. Bukowski's writing is an acquired taste, and he's one of those writers you either love or hate. He was a late bloomer as a novelist and didn't start writing them until his 50s. He wrote irregular poetry and short stories since his teens, but to write his first novel, Post Office, he was inspired by his publisher, John Martin, who offered him $100 a month for the rest of his life if he dedicated himself exclusively to writing. And lucky for us, he did. It was 1970, so $100 took you a lot further than it would today. I read all 6 novels Bukowski wrote, and with the exception of the last one, Pulp, they all are autobiographical and only differ in the time period they cover. And probably they could be combined into one large volume covering most of Bukowski's life. What is Factotum about? It is about surviving by following a minimum number of unwritten social rules and conditions and conforming as little as possible. And also about the difficulty of everyday life when you lack motivation for establishing daily routine and have no desire to chase the American dream. Basically, it is about Bukowski's existence and view of the world, a large part of it experienced while drunk. The poem Go All the Way, which is recited at the end of the movie, but not in the book, beautifully describes Bukowski's approach toward his writing and some more metaphorically toward his life. If you are going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, and maybe even your mind. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It could mean freezing on a park bench. It could mean jail. It could mean derision. It could mean mockery, isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the others are a test of your endurance, of how much you really want to do it. And you will do it, despite rejection and the worst odds, and it will be better than anything else you can imagine. If you are going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You will be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It is only good fight there is. Now, a bit of the plot. The plot is the everyday, somewhat uneventful and monotone life of unambitious and lazy Henry Chinaski, Bukowski's alter ego present in all his autobiographical novels, and the period covered is the 1940s when Bukowski was in his 20s. The novel starts with Chinaski arriving by bus in New Orleans. He says, "It was raining and I sat inside the bus station, but the people depressed me, so I went outside into the rain." Quickly he tires of the place and is on the train heading west. Back in Los Angeles, he moves in with his parents, but quickly is thrown out. When he saves some money, he travels to New York, but after a couple of short-lived jobs, he goes on to Philadelphia and then St. Louis. Eventually, he finds his way back to Los Angeles, where in a bar he meets a woman named Laura, who introduces him to a rich eccentric with a yacht. They spend some time together, drinking and enjoying each other's company, until it all comes to its somewhat tragic but natural end. Later, Chinaski meets Jen, who like him is a heavy drinker, dissatisfied with life. They move in together and he finds work in an effort to establish a semi-normal routine and be able to finance their drinking. Chinaski also starts betting at a racetrack, which earns him more than the job, but it increases problems with his companion at home, which brings everything to a rather sudden end. After dreaming about killing a man, he decides he has had enough of Jen and Los Angeles and travels to Miami. And once more, he tires quickly of his new home and returns to Los Angeles, where he moves back with Jen and finds a job in the LA Times and, as usual, manages to get fired. Then he tries to become a taxi driver, but is disqualified because of his extensive criminal record. And for the rest of the book, Chinaski goes through a few more jobs, splits with Jen, has sex with a Japanese girl, and ends up in a strip bar where the act doesn't stimulate him sexually, but it puts him in a poetic mood. Darlene fingered her naked breasts, showing them to us, her eyes filled with the dream, her lips moist and parted. Then suddenly she turned and waved her enormous behind at us. The beads leaped and flashed, went crazy, sparkled. The spotlight shook and danced like the sun. The four-man band crackled and banged. Darlene spun around. She tore away the beads. I looked, they looked. We could see her cunt hairs through the flesh-colored gauze. The band really spanked her ass, and I couldn't get it up. And that's Factotum. What can I say about it? Well, if I had to pick my favorite Bukowski novel, then Factotum would be it. The book sits in the middle. It is a bit more refined than Post Office, but still raw and less commercial than his later novels. In general, I like Bukowski's writing approach, so I enjoy all his works. I think the prerequisite to appreciate Bukowski is to connect with his style and subjects. It is that simple. You either do or you don't. Bukowski's novels are autobiographical, with some, maybe a lot, fiction squeezed in, perhaps to put some distance between himself and his work, and Chinaski replacing Bukowski might be to hint at and also justify the fiction. Some people label Chinaski as an anti-hero, which to me dehumanizes him, and the biggest attraction of the main character in the novel is his humanity, shown through his fragility, weaknesses, and even occasional compassion toward others. Chinaski, and here I'm talking about Chinaski in Factotum, is a young adult, a bit naive and learning the hard way about life and the world. He's as frail and as flawed as one can get. Frankly, I was horrified by life, at what a man had to do simply in order to eat, sleep, and keep himself clothed. So I stayed in bed and drank. When you drank, the world was still out there, but for the moment it didn't have you by the throat. And to permit himself to function, Chinaski erects an invisible fence around himself, and he maintains it with alcohol and by taking refuge in his writing. Small arrows are able to pass through the holes in the fence and do a little bruising, but it stops the large objects capable of major damage. What I like about Chinaski is that because of his imaginary fence, he can be an outside observer and see things for what they are. If you ever read Jiddu Krishnamurti, the big part of his philosophy is to become an outside observer and put distance between yourself and the events to be able to judge them. And that's what Chinaski does, as good as he can. He observes and judges. Here is a bit of it. These people are assholes. They have no intelligence. They don't know how to think. They are afraid of the mind. They are sick. They are cowards. They aren't thinking men like you and me. And also from his outside position, he has a clear view of how the society functions. I always started a job with the feeling that I'd soon quit or be fired, and this gave me a relaxed manner that was mistaken for intelligence or some secret power. Further, Chinaski remembers how in his childhood he was traumatized by the idea of work. He says, I remembered how my father used to come home each night and talk about his job to my mother. The job talk began when he entered the door, continued over the dinner table, and ended in the bedroom, where my father would scream, "Lights out!" at 8 p.m., so he could get his rest and his full strength for the job the next day. There was no other subject except the job. This trauma seems to have left on Chinaski permanent dislike and distaste for any type of regular work. Or maybe it was just an excuse for his laziness, lack of ambition, and need for no more than bare minimum to survive. In the book, Chinaski also talks about his need for solitude. It was the first time I had been alone in 5 days. I was a man who thrived on solitude. Without it, I was like another man without food or water. Each day without solitude weakened me. I took no pride in my solitude, but I was dependent on it. The darkness of the room was like sunlight to me. I think it is this desire and need for solitude that shaped and had the deepest impact on Bukowski's life. What makes Factotum's Chinaski different from the Chinaski in other novels is his need to travel. Yes, he travels in women, but he is paid to do it and returns to LA as soon as he can. In Factotum, he needs to travel to get away from Los Angeles, and it doesn't seem to be curiosity that drives him, but rather search. Search for something better. At this young age, he still hopes that he can find a place that is different from what he knows, and perhaps somewhere he might fit in. But once he realizes it is all the same, he comes to a conclusion he might as well stay in the familiar territory and sticks to Los Angeles. To sum it up, Factotum is your typical Bukowski, and if you enjoyed any of his other novels, most likely you will enjoy this one, where Bukowski is being Bukowski and gives us a dose of raw and brutal reality about life. Here to finish this review is a part of his poem, The Crunch, which sums up pretty well how Bukowski felt about the world. Our educational system tells us that we can all be big as winners. It hasn't told us about the gutters or the suicides, or the terror of one person aching in one place alone, untouched, unspoken to, watering a plant. If you like to see books' visual interpretations, there is a pretty good European adaptation of Factotum with Matt Dillon as Chinaski and Lily Taylor as Jen. Dillon does a good job in portraying Bukowski, and the film transmits the general feeling of the book, even though the setting is changed from the 1940s to contemporary times. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transform into a hardcover leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A, naturally tan hide I buy from a tanner in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First, I designed the cover, which what I did here, I took this painting of a bar scene. The oil paint makes it a bit blurry, as being seen through the eyes of a drunk, and I thought it went nicely with the general feeling of the book. On the back, I include a short blurb about the book, and inside the front cover, this quote: "Frankly, I was horrified by life, at what man had to do simply in order to eat, sleep, and keep himself clothed." If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel. And for every 100 donations, I will make a lottery and draw one name. And the winner will receive the book. So, if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing. When you make your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually, it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So, if you want one, don't snooze, or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.